I have to admit that this is one of my least favorite gospel lessons to preach on. I have gotten more angry emails about this one, and I think last time I preached on, a guy left actually. So we'll see what my score is on this one. I don't know about you all, but this story about Jesus and this Canaanite woman really makes me uncomfortable. I don't know. Did anybody else feel a little uncomfortable as we were hearing this story? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if anybody else got that kind of feeling about it. And I wondered, just why and if it's not you, why might it bother me? Why might this story bother me? Any ideas? Yeah, prejudices. All right. What does Jesus call this woman? He calls her a dog. All right. I challenge you to call some female in your life a dog and have her take it as a compliment. All right. All right. It's not a good thing. And I'm used to Jesus. I'm used to the Sunday school Jesus, right? The nice Jesus. The one that does everything perfectly and does everything right. And usually we hear pastors telling us, you should be more like Jesus. Be more loving. Be more accepting. Be more forgiving. And yet, at least for me today, I can't speak for anybody else, Jesus sounds rude and almost cruel in how he treats this woman. A Canaanite woman, she cries out for help. And Jesus, first off, he just straight up ignores her. All right? He just blows her off. Just like walks on by. And she persists and calls out again, and he says, I wasn't sent for you. You don't belong. And then she falls down at his knees, and he calls her a dog. All this woman is trying to do is to get her sick child healed. What's going on with that? Why is Jesus acting like this? Why do we hear this disturbing and challenging story this morning? I keep reading it and I'm like, where is the good news? What's the gospel for us this morning? And at first I wanted there to be some sort of explanation. So I get out my books. I occasionally do read. And I get out my books and 20, all right, I go through 20 top biblical scholars. All right, they're experts in Hebrew, experts in Greek, experts in ancient Middle Eastern culture, and I'm looking, and I'm hoping for an explanation. Maybe it's a mistranslation, right? All of these biblical scholars, all of these experts, agreed that when Jesus calls this woman a dog, it was meant as an insult. All right? In Greek and Hebrew, it was a common expression. Dog was a thing of scorn and contempt. Even worse, it turns out that the word dog was used as a common ethnic slur against anybody who was non-Jewish. How could Jesus act like this? Why would he say this to someone? As Christians who also happen to be Lutherans, we confess that Jesus of Nazareth was 100% God. Right? Okay, good. All right. I got you there. He's able to feed 5,000 people with just a few loaves and a couple fish. He's able to walk on water. He's able to heal terrible diseases with just a word. He's able to raise people from the dead. And yet, as Christians who also happen to be Lutherans, we also confess that at the same time, Jesus is 100% human. This woman was a Canaanite. She was an outsider. She was an ancient enemy of Jesus' country. All right? All the way back to Noah, they'd been fighting each other. Jesus would have grown up hearing stories about how terrible those people were. It was even in the Old Testament that Jesus grew up reading. In the Word of God. These were the people that God supposedly said that they were supposed to ethnically cleanse when they moved into the Promised Land. Kill them all. That's what Jesus would have grown up hearing. This woman was living contrary to God's will. She was worshiping the wrong God. She was from another country. There were a ton of reasons that Jesus treated this woman like a dog, like she was less than human. And this is a rare and a unique story in Matthew's gospel. All right? This is the only time that Jesus is ever, in this entire book, is ever out-taught. It's the only time that he's ever out-compassion, out-mercy. And it's by the least likely of people, the least powerful, the least educated. And I'm left wondering, what if we are called as individuals, as Christians, as a church, to learn from Jesus' humanity, from his mistakes, just as much as we are called to strive and struggle and emulate his divine attributes? What if that's why we hear this story this morning? And you don't have to raise your hand for this, but I will on this one. Is how many of us hold views because of where, when, and how we grew up that might be considered prejudiced against certain groups of people? I know that. I'll throw my hand up on that one. Maybe you hold a low opinion of certain people based on their education level. Maybe you hold a low opinion of somebody based on their sexual orientation or their socioeconomic status. Or maybe certain political beliefs you think less of somebody if they hold those. Here's an easy method to catch yourself and to realize if you hold certain prejudices. All right? If you ever say the phrase, I don't want this to sound racist, but just stop what you're going to say next. All right? And if you ever say, those people, be real careful when you talk about those people and them. It's likely that at those points, we are judging people and dehumanizing them. And maybe this is what Jesus is hearing in his ears. All right, on one side, he's hearing, Lord, have mercy, Kyrie eleison. In the other ear, he hears those Canaanites, those freeloaders. They're always taking what doesn't belong to them. So I'm left wondering why Jesus eventually praises this woman's faith and heals her daughter. Some people will tell you that they'll say, well, it was all a test. Jesus was just testing her to see how much she believes. I really hope that's not true. Because if Jesus would test a desperate woman with a sick daughter to see if she's worthy, I think that'd be worse than calling her a nasty name. So what eventually changes Jesus' mind? I want to tell you a story about me, and a story I'm not terribly proud of. Many of you know that I used to work at camp, and I worked at camp for a lot of years, and so at one point I was in charge of hiring staff. And I remember saying out loud that I would never hire an openly gay counselor because I worried about the publicity problems that might come from upset parents and upset pastors. Now, I mean, mind you, my parents had always brought me up to believe that gay people were created that way by God and were good people, and yet all I could imagine was camp getting sued, boycotted, or otherwise judged if I hired one of those people. Then one afternoon, I'm walking around camp with one of the best counselors I've ever known. And this guy tells me that he's gay. But this wasn't some nameless or faceless gay person. It was Ryan, my friend. I grew up with him in church. I had first communion with him. I got confirmed with him. I graduated with him. And Ryan was hands down one of the most amazing Christians that I've ever had the fortune of meeting. I had seen him work with kindergartners all the way up to high schoolers. And they all left camp knowing they were loved by God and loved by Ryan. And I can't imagine what this world would look like, honestly, if hundreds of young men and women missed out on feeling God's love through Ryan's words, actions, and teachings because of a prejudice, a fear that I held in my heart. In a moment, my mind was changed. My heart was changed because I met someone who shattered my stereotypes. And I wonder if that's what happens today in today's gospel with Jesus and this Canaanite woman. All right, so let's play this out, how this happens. The woman starts crying out for Jesus' help, this outsider, and Jesus ignores her. His disciples urge Jesus to send her away. Get rid of her. She's one of those people. Send her back. And yet, even though he ends up calling her a dehumanizing name, Jesus doesn't send her away. He keeps listening. And she keeps talking and trying and arguing. And finally, Jesus exclaims, and it's very, I think this is the crux. He says, "Woman, great is your faith." She can no longer be ignored. She is no longer one of those people. She is recognized for who she truly is, a child of God. Is it possible that Jesus, 100% God and 100% human, was still learning, still trying to figure out, still trying to discern God's will and mission for his ministry? Is it possible that Jesus changes his mind based on a personal encounter? This is gospel. This is good news. God's mercy, love, and forgiveness are constantly overflowing and expanding to people who first seem unlikely or undeserving. God's grace breaks boundaries and ignores our comfort levels. And God doesn't ask for permission before doing so. And yet, with grace, there always comes a challenge as well. There's always grace, gift, and also challenge. If Jesus can change his mind, what does that mean for all of us? We might be called to change our minds as well. The truth is that we can change. And that also is good news, but it also makes me nervous. Because if you think about it, how many times have we heard, "Oh, that'll never change. I can never change. She'll never change." God tells you, me, and the entire world today that that is wrong. That simply isn't true. Everything and everyone can change. Peace is possible. Healing is possible. Hope is possible. Where do we start? Changing long-held prejudices and beliefs will be difficult. But maybe we could begin like our Lord and listen and talk with someone who holds a different idea or a different belief or different values. How many of us live in echo chambers? All right? And stay with me here. An echo chamber is where our friends, our family, our ideas and information only come from one source or one opinion. If you're liberal, you only listen to MSNBC, and NPR, all right? And if you're a conservative, you only watch Fox and conservative news sites. How many of us have said derogatory things about whole groups of people, and we've never even met somebody from that group that we're talking about? This doesn't mean that we're supposed to agree with everyone, all right? I want to get that out there because agreement is overrated. It doesn't mean that we're supposed to agree. It never says that Jesus agreed. He doesn't say to the Canaanite woman, "You know what, your gods are just as good as my God." But Jesus does say that he sees her as a human being who deserves help, mercy, and compassion. Getting to know people who are different than us, who act different than us, think different than us. It's It's going to be difficult. It's going to be uncomfortable. And it's going to be frustrating. But most things in life that are worth doing are those things. But who knows? In spending time with people we think we have little or nothing in common, maybe we too, like Jesus, will realize that all people belong to God. And those people will become God's people. Amen.